guys an update since the freeze we had here, where it got down to minus 11.3 Celsius where we are on Bowen Island, British Columbia, Canada. The rest of Vancouver got about minus 12 to minus 15 depending on where you were. So during this freeze we were away in Hawaii, and before the freeze I protected some of the plants knowing that it would get pretty cold, but arguably I could have done more. Some of them look better than others, so let's just quickly go over what made it fine and what needed some more help than I gave it. So this is the Camerops cerifera. I had the fronds wrapped up in burlap, and also I put a blanket and a tarp over it. And as you can see, there's a little bit of damage to the tips of the fronds. However, the center spears look good, and there's no spear pull on it as well. So looks that kind of minimum protection I gave it was enough to make it survive. Again, these Camerops cerifera are technically hardy down to that temperature, but only if they're kept dry. So the tarp was very important in helping it survive. The Yucca gloriosa look fine. This is a Rostrata that I'm trying to bring back to life. It looks good. Again, Rostratas can be very hardy when they get larger. When they're small, they are susceptible to damage if it gets too cold and too wet. This is the needle palm, Rapiphytum hystrix, looking good. I had just a blanket and a tarp over that, and again, probably could have left it alone. It is the most cold hardy palmate palm there is. Again, when they're young, they are a little more susceptible to damage in the cold than when they're more mature. The Yucca color guards are fine. This Yucca magenta is also good, which I was quite surprised because it's not as hardy as the other ones. Here's some more Rostrata. These are medium sized, well, I guess young size, but they're fine, which is good. Filamentosa looks good. This is the Trapcarpus fortunei. This one looks a little battered, but it's mostly from wind damage than from cold damage. And as you can see, the spear up there looks pretty good. So I don't expect anything bad to come to that. The Phormiums, they do this, I guess, after -8 to get damaged. I had it wrapped up in, I think, just a tarp. I put some leaves down into the crown, into the growth points, just to help insulate them. And then I wrapped it in a tarp. But as you can see, it's taken damage and will probably die back to the ground. It has come back several times from that though, so I'm not too worried other than looking at it like that for a year. Let's walk to the other side of the driveway here and take a look at some other palms. So these are some more yuccas here. That's a gloriosa. And then these guys, I forgot the name of them actually. They're like a collar guard, but they're the inverse color pattern of them. They're fine. They're also a type of filamentosa, so they're hardy. This is the Sable Minor. I don't know what to make of this one because it's had spear pull early when I got it, so it might be toast. But as you can see, there's still really nice green to the fronds. No damage whatsoever other than the spear pull that I received when I first received it. That was in the fall that spear pulled, which isn't ideal, obviously. I have a video on that, by the way, if you want to look for it. This is another, oh, this is actually a blue sentry yucca, no damage. This is a Cordyline indivisa, which is very special. I'm trying to grow it out. I did wrap it in a blanket and a tarp, and I put leaves around the base. And as you can see, the very tips of the leaves got damage, but The actual center is still good, nice and firm, no pull there. This Yucca glauca, no problem there. And this is a Trachycarpus wagnerianus. As you can see, it has sustained some damage, and I am a firm believer that the wagnerianus are not as hardy as the regular Fortunei. And this one actually even had some protection. It had leaves on it, had a blanket around the trunk, and it had an overhead cover to keep it dry. And despite all those measures, it still took damage. The center spear, however, is in good shape and is not pulling out, so that's good. And I'm also hoping that these things do get more hardy as they get larger. So this one's still very young. So maybe that was part of the cause of the damage. This is one of my larger rostratus, and 0 damage to this one. It's got a nice 2-foot trunk on it. These guys are champions. These are the winning yucca if you want something exotic in the Northwest Pacific. And as you can tell, at minus 12, no problems. And that's a cold, wet minus 12. And I did no protection to this whatsoever. Here's something that I wish I had protected. This is the Grevillea. It's from Australia, but it is cold hardy down to, they say, beyond minus 12. But as you can see at minus 11.3 that we had here, the needles are black, and now the needles are defoliating. So I don't know what to make of this. Maybe it'll grow back new leaves in the spring, or maybe it'll come back from the root, or maybe it's a goner. And I certainly hope it's not a goner because it's quite rare. Another blue sentry. This is a eucalyptus, Nymphophila, I think. Nymphophila. It's one of the most cold hardy eucalyptus you can get, and that's the reason I'm growing it, because the regular Eucalyptus gunnii is just not hardy enough here when it gets down to like minus 15. Not that it ever does here, but in town they have some big ones that unfortunately sustained quite a bit of damage after that last freeze. Some more collar guards there, and another Phormium that got fried. But as you can see down in the crown there, it's still looking pretty good, so that's probably going to come back no problem. Evergreen magnolias, they're pretty much bulletproof here. That's a Cape Paris. Let's take a look inside the yard. Okay, so this is the one that received the most damage. This is a Trachycarpus manipur, and I did protect it, arguably a minimal protection. It had a blanket around the trunk. It had bubble wrap around the petioles and the fronds, and then I put a tarp bag over that to keep it dry, and then leaves around the base of the roots. And as you can see, at minus 11.3, which is our minimum, it sustained quite a bit of damage. So I think the duration of the cold played a significant factor. We were in sub-zero temperatures for a week, and then we had 2 nights where it was like minus 9, and then of course that low of minus 11 also didn't help. But when I look at it closer, I mean, it's done this before and it came back. Never had spear pull once. So you can see the actual crown still nice and green. The spear is actually actively growing and there's no spear pull. So that's all important factors. I'm gonna leave these fronds on here for now until I see some like accelerated growth on it, and then I can cut them off because there is still green to them, and of course that's all energy for the palm while it's recovering. I think long term I might take it out of this planter because planters obviously don't help. It'll be more hardy in the ground, but in general the manipurs are not as hardy as the Fortunei. I'd say they're probably good to minus 8, and then below that they're going to sustain damage like this. So I might just put it in a pot and just have it growing in a pot. I don't know. It's not ideal because as it gets bigger it's going to get heavy to move. But that's the manipur. So on the deck here, all these plants you see in pots I had in the greenhouse during the freeze, And we have a heater in the greenhouse, so it keeps it above 0, usually at 10 degrees Celsius, but during that freeze it probably got in, I don't know, probably got to 3 or 4 Celsius in the greenhouse. So these guys are all fine, but again, they were protected in the greenhouse. Got the queen there, and Armada, young Jubea there, cycad. But if it's above 0, all these plants are out here on the deck during the entire winter. So I only bring them into the greenhouse if it gets, I'd say, a few degrees below 0. If it's just a little bit below 0, I put them under the eaves and I put some blankets around them. That's about it. And that only happens a few times in the winter. Down here we have my champion, the Jubea chilensis. And I did take extra measures to make sure this guy survived. Put some C9 Christmas lights around it for heat. I put some leaves around the base, and I built this enclosure here. So this enclosure is made out of 2x4s, and it has a blanket as the first layer, and the second layer tarps, and I put that over this. So it had heat and it had protection. So if you don't do that, these Jubeas at anywhere below -10 will sustain damage, probably to the fronds only, but in severe cases they can die completely. And as you know, these are very expensive palms and very slow growing, so I did not want to have any losses with this one. So what I did with this one is considered moderate protection. If I wanted to step it up even beyond that, I would have built the shelter with some rigid styrofoam for extra insulation rather than just a blanket. But in this climate here, I think that's overkill. The Musa Baju are all melted down to the ground. Before I left, I did cut all the leaves off and I piled them around the roots. So it's pretty much what I do every year. They never survive the entire winter standing up with their leaves on. I thought maybe this year with El Nino they would, but the damn polar vortex shows up again, and it's brutal, and I really hate it. But unfortunately, that's the new reality now. We're getting these polar vortexes every year. It's a pineapple guava. It's actually looking good. I have a few more in the back, which also look okay. Some of them lost a few leaves, but the leaves come back in the spring. So this is a real winner of an evergreen plant that makes fruit if you want to give it a try. And again, I didn't protect that at all. Over here, we have another big Fortunii. This one has about 8 feet of trunk on it. It's my oldest palm, and again, it's fine. It's taken much cooler temperatures than -11, and it's good, no issues. The Schlafera, on the other hand, this is Schlafera taiwaniana. It did sustain some damage, and I'm hoping it comes back. These older leaflets might fall off, but I'm hoping it retains the new growth or gets some side growth along here. Normally it's fine at -11, so I was quite surprised to see that. We had also very high winds, so the winds may have dried out the tissue, which is not ideal for any plant. So that could have been a factor. Here's a T-Rex. I basically defoliated it completely before I left and put a blanket around it and then covered it with a tarp. And I think that was key in helping it survive without melting down to the ground like it has in previous years. Finally, this is my big timber bamboo, Phyllostaches vivax, or Oreo callus, I believe it's called. So all I do for this every year, because it's in the planters, I put lots of leaves around the base. And as you can see, it's fine. I also have several different types of bamboo in the yard, but all of them are hardy. So this is the only one that's a little more tender, but as you can see, no issues. So really fortunate to have this greenhouse. It's where I store and overwinter all my you know, subtropicals and tropicals. And without it, I wouldn't be able to do a lot of what I do. We also have some olives growing here year-round in the ground, and the olives are just fine, even at temperatures like -11. These are hardy olives from Crimea region, so they really do not mind getting down so cold. Another evergreen magnolia. That's a loquat over there. Loquats, minor damage to the growth tips, but again, they'll branch at that point and keep growing. And the rest of the yard is hardy stuff, so nothing to worry about. I had a few citrus outside, which did sustain damage. A Sudachi and a Calamodin, they sustained damage, but I think they'll actually come back with new foliage in the spring, or at least I'm hoping. This is another Schlifera Delavei, and again, no problems with those. The Fatsias, they do sustain damage when it gets that cold, but they come back for me every year. And of course the Rhodos are all good. Never have any issues with the Rhodos. Anyways, that's the update for what it looks like after the polar vortex. I must say I really am discouraged by these polar vortexes. They really are starting to dictate what I want to grow, because nobody wants to be constantly worried about their plants. So if I find things are getting damaged year after year with the polar vortexes, I might stop growing that thing. But yeah, fancy bamboos I love, rhodos I love, magnolias, palm trees obviously. So hope you guys are having a great day. Again, thanks for watching, and hopefully your yards will not sustain damage during the last deep freeze.